Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma. I'm Nick, and today we are talking about 5 lessons that we learned from the bestest Boston Terrier ever.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set. Hey, Kizma.
Hello there.
How are you?
I am good. I'm a little like, I wonder how this episode is going to go because we're talking about Leonard, our Boston Terrier.
And sadly, Leonard has
left us.
He's left us. He's crossed the rainbow bridge, as they say.
Yeah.
He was a really good dog. But we're not going to make this a super sad episode or anything.
Yeah, it wasn't
like
the point because I know everybody that has an animal or has lost an animal, like you totally get it. And you just, even some of the emails that I sent out to my list where I talked about so many sweet comments back because there's something about our little critters, right? They are, they love us unconditionally.
Yeah.
And when they go, it's a sad moment. And it's important to be able to, I feel, allow them to go before the quality of life is not what it should be.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, to me anyway, is because it's one of those situations where you don't really know how attached you are until the moment comes, until you're in it. And then it reveals exactly how attached you are. And
I pretty much knew I was attached.
Yeah. You were more attached than me, but I was also more attached than maybe I gave myself credit for. So now I want to start with a little bit of a retrospective. You do not strike me as a dog person.
I'm not a dog person.
So of all, Boston is a very dog. Like it's a lot of dog. So how did you wind up with a Boston Terrier?
It's really a funny story. Zoe and I are cat people, as Nick is really. We had 2 cats in Hong Kong. One died tragically. And then we brought Sabrina, the little black cat, over, shipped her over from Hong Kong. And
she meows in Chinese.
She's very loud. And then as soon as we got back, we went with our dear friends, Sharon and Zach and Hannah, to Irv Monroe and Sue Monroe's lake house. And it was just beautiful. And they had a Boston Terrier named Spanky. And I just thought Spanky was the bomb. Like he was short and fat and he would follow Sue everywhere, just like follow Susan Monroe everywhere. And I'm like, it's like a cat. Like this isn't a dog. This is a cat. And so they knew I loved him so much. Or it's like, you love that dog. I'm like, it's a cat. And after the visit, I would say it was maybe a month, 2 months, Irv calls. He's like, there's a Boston Terrier puppy that needs a home. Its owner was in a car accident and institutionalized. And there's a vet tech out somewhere. Like I didn't even really have my bearings yet. Do you want it? And I was like, sure. I'm thinking it's a cat. I'll never forget the day Zoe and I went to pick him up. He was so tiny. And the girl that was taking care of him was amazing. And she was crying. And he looked at her like, do I really have to go? And I was like, oh my gosh, this dog, like it's a dog. So we took it and we had no idea how to train it or do anything. And I remember day 1 or day 2, he got out the front door and just took off. And for some reason, Zoe had this yellow rubber ducky and she goes chasing him with the rubber ducky. And it worked. Like he heard the squeak and I don't know. And he came back. So it was like this love-hate for a while. Like he chewed the foot off of our Buddha.
Oh, I remember that.
Like just chewed on our wooden Buddha.
I remember coming over when we were first dating. I came over and there were like shoes on the stove. and I was like, that's different, and you saw me look at it and you're like, it's because of Leonard. Yeah, and I got it right away.
He ate through one of my new Ugg boots, totally destroyed it, at which point I was yelling at him, you're leaving. And then Zoe came down the stairs and she's like, I thought you weren't supposed to be attached because I just gotten back from
Speaking
India. Or
of
something. And I
attachment.
was like, oh my God. So, but people loved him. And as he grew and he got a little bit better trained, he'd go up to the yoga studio with me. I'd walk him up. Everybody loved Leonard. I walk him up and down Kercheval. Everyone loved him. And he was a great dog. And I'll remember too, when we moved out here, you were already out here
Mm-hmm.
and I was in charge of flying again, the pets across the country. You took a photo and it was the first palm tree that Leonard peed on. Do you remember that?
I do. It's in my Facebook. It's still one of my favorites.
I'll have to put it in the
I'm
show
probably going to
notes.
share that when I write a little elegy for him. Yeah, he took great. I mean, if he was built for any kind of
my
weather,
gosh.
he was built for San
Yeah,
Diego. Like
he loved it. And there was the dog park in Ocean Beach that we would go to. He would hump all the dogs for a while. And I was like, he's fixed. But some of the owners didn't understand.
Yeah, they didn't like that.
They didn't like that. And then there would be the Boston Terrier party meetups.
Oh, those were the best.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Oh,
So many Boston Terriers. Like they're just the cutest freaking things. And then, yeah, I mean, some of the other fun memories would be when Zoe was young. It was like I remember we would get pizza in Detroit on Fridays from Farms Market and he just knew.
mhm.
Like he would stalk her,
She was the weak one.
the long dark haired girl.
Yeah.
And
The weak link.
he would go flying in the air and grab it out of her hand and run.
Yeah.
It was like he just knew. He smelled it and he knew. And long dark haired girl would not be focused enough. Like you and I would be like, you're not getting my pizza. Inevitably, he would take it.
Yeah, you would get it. It was so amazing. That brings, to lesson number one.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loves a Boston Terrier.
Everyone loves a Boston Terrier. They're just so freaking cute.
Everywhere I walk with that dog,
Yeah.
people stop.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh,
It's a Boston.
it's a Boston. Or they're like, is he a Frenchie or is he a Boston?
Yeah.
And they're just so taken with him.
Yeah.
I was shocked. Like I never went out. It was weird to go to the dog park and people knew my dog and didn't know me. Right. Because sometimes we would have a dog walker go there or you would take them and I wouldn't. And I would go and they're like, oh, it's Leonard. And they're like, who are you? I'm like, I'm the dad kind of. But he was just a charmer.
Yeah.
And like they're such they really are such amazing
fascinating dogs. Yeah.
So much character. We have a Facebook page to prove it. I love my Boston Terrier with over 35,000 likes on it. We're not particularly active on there these days, but it was just somewhere.
And people who own Bostons love them.
They love them.
And oftentimes they have more than one and they take over the bed.
Which was something that we considered very briefly there. But then I just thought, oh my God, if you amplify this energy, there's the happy thought of, okay, maybe they'll cancel each other out. Like maybe they'll tire each other out.
I think that's part of it.
I think that might be part of it, but that could go wrong too. Like they might not, and they could just keep ramping each other up, So, and that's a lot. Like it's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so the second, you can make friends easily through fun. These are all things that I've learned really just by observing my dog.
Yes, this is true because he's fun and he would sort of trot around and anybody that came up to him loved him and he would just be friends. The funniest story around this is I think when we were still living in Michigan, Zoe and I drove to Ohio to see my mom when she was still alive and had the house and the house was like on 2 acres of land. And Lenny loved the house. We didn't let him loose on the land because there was a golf course next door. Like who knows where he would have ended up. Something happened where he got out the front door and there was a man working on the yard, Jimmy. And for some reason, Jimmy did not quite understand that it might be odd for this black and white dog to just rip down the lawn and disappear.
You just let it happen.
He was like, because we're like, where's Lenny? And the door's open. And then my mom starts flipping out. Of course, she blames herself. And Zoe's like, oh, Lenny took off. And I'm like, Jimmy, did you see a dog? He's like, oh yeah, this black and white dog just ran past me. And I'm like, did you not think that was odd? So I hop in the car. There's a subdivision down below. I'm driving around. Zoe's running. My mom's crying. And finally, I'm just like, I don't know where this dog is. I don't know how we're going to do this. There's a lot of land. I kind of just have to hope he's going to come back. And leave it to Zoe, man. She's got that little radar. Yeah. Little perceptive spoke. She was walking and she like followed the trail and there was a house below us and the sliding door to the kitchen was open, and there were all these kids hovering around a Boston Terrier. And she goes in and she's like, "Is that your dog?" And they're like, "No, he just ran in and we called him George." And it was like all these kids around the Boston Terrier, just like, "Well, actually it's Leonard and we got to take him home." And it's just, just to show up in someone's kitchen and all of a sudden you have all this love. Because you're so much fun.
Yeah, because he's fun. Like that's something that I really learned. Like it's like, I don't know. It's like sometimes I'll like maybe try to be cool or like something and like really and truly
be yourself.
I just have so much more fun when I'm just being myself and having fun. And that's and you make so many more friends that way.
Right.
So it was really instructive for me to watch him, and then, and of course, like there were certain dogs that he would like,
the big ones.
Yeah. The big ones.
So funny.
And he's, he wasn't that big. He was a very little dog, but he would, like no fear around that.
Yeah.
He's going to tell what it is. He did not make as good friends there. Why? Because he wasn't having fun.
He wasn't having fun.
Yeah. He wasn't his Leonardy self.
Yeah. What's another lesson?
Number 3, this is the big one. When you know someone, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So there were certain things like you can see it more with animals, right? Just because like an animal, like a dog is generally not like a cat, except for Spanky, which kind of duped you into the whole Leonard saga anyway. Yeah. But like, and especially like somebody who, like a dog, you know this dog for so long, you get attuned with their habits.
Right.
And try as I might, and this is certainly my failure as a trainer. I tried to train him at least a couple times. Remember, I bought that little clicker thing?
Yeah, I used that like for 3 days. I was done.
That was done. But I tried a couple other things.
I got him to raise a paw on the other paw. He did a high five another paw.
Yeah, you did. That was really awesome. That was about as far as we ever got with training him. Sit
lie down.
Yeah, sit. I don't know, lie down.
Yeah, I got him lying
down.
Go
to your bed.
Sort of.
Kind of. That one was questionable.
That was like
for sure. Yeah. Don't eat that. That one never worked. never ever worked. But when their habits, their patterns,
right.
like what this little being does and is, and when you expect it to be different, you're just setting yourself up for a whole world of stress.
Right, just like people. Yeah. I mean, his big thing is if he ran out of the house back in Michigan, if he got out, he would there was this big circle of pachysandra around a front tree. He would zip around it 3 times.
Fast. He was fast.
Furiously fast. And then take off down the street to the Webbs, who often had cookouts. It's like he knew where the food was. Sometimes he'd go next door to the apple, like orchard place, whatever. But you just knew he was going to be, there was no hanging out in the front yard. I'm going. I'm out.
Yeah. And it was amazing to watch it. And every time you let him out, he'd zip around that. The only exceptions were in the winter when it was super cold.
Yeah,
and even
snow.
Then, oftentimes he would do one lap real quick and then he'd poop, but he couldn't he would lift his back legs up.
Yeah, he'd do a bakasana.
Yeah, he'd do a little arm balance there, trying to, just because he didn't want to have his feet on the cold. Yeah. He hated the cold.
Yeah. He was much happier in San Diego.
And his habits, like he would beg at the table.
Always beg at the table. I know. My fault. My fault. Total my fault.
Oh, you reward him every time.
I know.
He knew. That was a funny thing that we had an understanding when you were out of town and I would sit in the exact same place and eat. We sit down at the little table and he would rarely beg from me. Because he knew, he's like, this dude ain't going to buy it, But I would give him a treat afterward or something like that. But we just weren't doing the whole begging thing. But he knew. He knew. He's like, I'm going to get something. You just couldn't help yourself.
I know. He had so much joy around the food.
He did, especially later in life. Yeah. Like you really couldn't not.
And the interesting thing too is when he started to lose his eyesight, which a lot of Bostons do because of the way their eyes bug out and the injuries and the whole thing. And he was still so happy.
He was. It never seemed to diminish his happiness.
Not until he got really sick and he was disoriented on top of it, where I could tell he just didn't have his bearings.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he'd get scared in that. But it never, when he was feeling good, like the blindness didn't matter. There's no shame around, bumping into stuff or tripping on something or anything. Like there was none of that. He just like, well, whatever, man, and just bounce around just like Leonard. Which brings us to number 4. This is a big one for me. This is something that I learned by watching this dog. his amazing, truly extraordinary ability to manifest things through persistence and through charm.
It's so true.
Now, they say you can't get through life on good looks alone. And I think there's some merit to that, but you can with charm.
Charm. The guy had charm.
Charm and persistence, and you have a winning combination.
Right.
And I'm not, we're having fun with this, but this is actually a really serious lesson for me, because if he wanted something, he would not quit.
Never.
He would, if he wanted that treat
Yeah.
or wanted that thing or wanted that cat bed.
Oh yeah.
It was his.
Yeah.
And he would be so persistent, and he would sit there, and that's how he manifested with you so much food, because he would just sit there and stare at you. And sooner or later,
put his little paw up.
Yeah, you couldn't help it. He's like, oh yeah, maybe I'll try paw another paw. You know, maybe that'll work. Like he'd start doing it. He would try anything, and he would be so laser focused and like nothing was swaying him from the thing that he wanted, which was 98% of the time was food. Nothing would sway him from that. And that kind of focus was something I thought, wow, that's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't want to live in the head of a dog. You know, I'm a human being. I'm more complex than that. But the ability to turn on that focus, man, that is something
focus
powerful.
And charm.
And that persistence to stay with it.
Well, look at his little surrogate family. Shout out to Jamie and Lulu, who for the past year have been watching him when we have so many travels. You know, he roped Lulu into like sleeping on the sofa with him at night. I mean, talk about charm and persistence.
Just charm.
13-year-old girls like sleeping at night on the sofa because Leonard's staying over.
Yeah. She wanted to be with the Leonard because of his charm.
Right.
And his charm, like he could do that. I mean, like he'd get pets out of anybody.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't matter.
Right.
It didn't matter who, like even non-dog people were just like, all right, I'll give you a few pets, because he's so charming.
So charming.
It's really powerful. And I think about that, the persistence, the focus, and the charm that he used in his own little formula. And it is definitely fodder for meditation, everybody. You know, to really reflect on that. It's really worth it.
A little bit more charm in your life.
Yeah. The things that you want to look for is where do you quit? Because I guarantee Leonard would not quit.
Ever.
Where do you lose focus or get distracted? Very difficult to distract that dog if he had his eyes and sights on some food. And where do you get into that kind of it's not going to work, or just that kind of like negative blame. Doubt, or something like that will take you out of that charming, fun space. Like those are places that you want to look for in yourself as you reflect on it. It's totally worth it. And you can call on the spirit of Leonard to guide you if you want. I don't know if he's still hanging around in the ethers, but maybe he'll come. You know?
He might come, guys.
The last one I want to talk about is more universal to dogs, is just how they teach us and show us and demonstrate that unconditional love.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh man, we can mess up so many times and they still love us.
Yeah.
We can turn our backs on them, yell at them, whatever, and they still love us.
Yeah.
It really is a beautiful thing.
And we'd get a little protest poop.
That would happen.
We'd be gone, you know, and then come back, and you get a little attitude here and there, but it never diminished that. And I wish I could understand what goes on in the dog's head that allows them to do that.
I don't know.
Because it's a powerful thing.
It really is. Yeah. Devotion.
Yeah.
Devotion, gratitude, all those things we were talking about last week. And this coronavirus thing is like devotion, gratitude, love. Man.
Yeah.
Goes a long way.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
Leonard, he will be missed.
He will definitely be missed. Sabrina's kind of glad he's gone. She doesn't seem at all phased.
She doesn't. It's weird. Like not at all.
Not at all.
She must sense the absence.
Well, she's been hanging around me more. So I think she's just glad to have us to ourselves. She was annoyed with him, which was sad.
She's finally got everything that she wanted, was the whole place to herself. Miles kicked off a couple of years ago. Yeah. And then she was stuck with Leonard with no buffer.
Yeah. Miles was the buffer to her. So it was an agitating time for her.
Now she's got the whole place to herself.
18-year-old cat. But anyways, just thanks for listening, everyone. You know, it's sort of a life event. And of course it can be sad, but he's brought so much joy. So we wanted to share the joyful moments because we know we have a lot of animal lovers in our audience and you know what we're talking about. Yeah. So
couple things.
Mhm.
If you're looking for a little bright space on the internet, go find our Facebook group. I love mybostonterrier.com. I don't know if we'll keep it, maybe.
For a while.
Yeah,
or
for
we'll
a
hand it
while.
off to someone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I love my Boston Terrier. We'll link it in the show notes.
Mhm.
If you're wherever you're listening to this, come find us and find a post and comment below. What are the lessons that you've learned from your dog?
Oh, that's great.
I would love to learn. I would
Yeah.
just love to hear other people's perspective on this. Just
That's great.
comment below. Like, what have you learned from your dog? And how, really, like, how has it informed your life?
Mhm.
I mean, we joke about this, but there are serious things to me.
Yeah.
Like,
There are.
I really watch, and
Yeah.
I want to learn. Like,
Yeah.
I can learn from a dog. Why not? He's missed. It was so sad to take out the recycling
Oh,
the other day, and I
yeah.
got home today, and there was,
you expect.
yeah, I didn't have anything to do.
Pitter patter.
I could just walk up to my desk and
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, much love to everyone out there who loves animals. And even if you don't, you are still loved. Thanks for joining Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. And we'll see you next week. Namaste.
Peace.
Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.